Hi everybody, Russ and my Hammers 11. Hope you're safe and well. If you use your channel, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell icon so you're made aware of any time I put new content on. Videos going up daily, and particularly in this weird situation where we've had so much football and now we've got nothing, this drought until sort of mid-September, we'll be keeping your West Ham fix going. So make sure you hit that bell icon so you don't miss any content. We've got obviously loads of great guests, loads of fans, celebrities, players coming up, and including today's guest, football journalist, Green Street Hammers, his very own Henry Tomlinson. Hi, Hen, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing, Russ?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. How's life treating you at the moment?
It's all right. Like the
How's
football
things
came
going?
back and it gave us a lot to write about, and it's been sort of a challenging few months without the football. So you had to be a bit creative with trying to sort of get content out for people to read. But I think we've come out of it quite well. I think.
Yeah, what's it like being obviously like particularly a football journalist, and particularly obviously writing for the Green Street Hammers and stuff as well, when there was no football on, like during that sort of weird period, it must be hard. You scrabbling around for ideas and stuff.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, obviously, there's always leaks from the club, as we know. So they've always got something to sort of write about and report for people. Because even though there was no football, people still really wanted to still engage with the
Yeah,
club in whatever ways. I mean, I remember writing about the pre-season, well, the pre-restart football matches
yeah,
of against QPR and Crystal Palace, and there was so little to go on, and they were just sort of re-verbalizing it for more people to read about, and
yeah,
like loads of people tracked on to read about it because they just wanted to get whatever fix they could. So that was really positive, and obviously just sort of trying to keep everyone up to date with what's happening at the club and how football could return and everything like that.
yeah. And obviously now we've got nothing until mid-September. At least you'll have loads of hopefully nice transfer news to report on, and at least there'll be some sort of silly season at the moment, isn't it, for the first few weeks? But there seems to be quite a bit already kicking off transfer rumor wise already. So yeah, I think it could be an interesting summer. I think for you, I think that's fair to say. I think
Yeah, definitely. It seems to me like it more feels like a January transfer window. The way
yes,
it's just going to fly by, I think, and rumors are going to go to that player to this player like as quick as it does in January, rather than in the usual summer window
yeah,
where it's you built up for a player for 2 weeks, thinking, oh, he's the one we're going for. But I think this one is just going to go that player because it's just going to be
yeah.
rapid changing environments of where players are going, especially with like the finances at the moment, what's
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows really as well, isn't it, in terms of finances and everyone's all the Premier League teams seem to be in the same boat. Everyone's it's like no one's got any money and they're all just trying to move players around and trying to it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be you're going to see some strange transfers. I think happening. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. I think there's going to be some odd players pop out of nowhere, but I also think a lot of it might be negotiational tactics. Be like, we don't
Mm,
have any money to
yeah,
try lower prices because that's the whole talk has been about. Is no one's going to have any money for the transfer window because of all of this coronavirus. But match day revenue doesn't actually contribute to a lot of the club's budget,
no,
so they've still got all of the prize money from the Premier League and the TV rights. So there should still be a substantial part of the turnover available for the club. So
yeah.
we'll wait to see how much of it actually does get spent.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. We'll wait with bated breath. So for you, Henry, obviously we see the shirt. You see, you got the shirt on. Obviously, a West Ham fan. The question I always ask everyone who comes on the site is why? Why is West Ham your club? Why did you pick West Ham?
My West Ham fandom goes back probably from before I was born, and it originated from my dad.
Yeah,
My granddad was a Leicester fan, but had no real interest in football. And my dad, when he was going to school, he was fed up of everyone being like a Chelsea fan or a Liverpool fan or a Leeds fan, as it was in those days. And I remember he always told me he took out a newspaper. He's from Epsom, so like sort of south of London, and he literally went like that, and it lands on West Ham, and he was like, you know what, Jeff Hurst, Bobby Moore, all of these like legendary players. He was like perfectly happy with it, and it's continued for him from there. He went to one of the FA Cup finals that we won. He told me a story about how he had a very long night and a very painful morning after it. And he took me to my first game at Upton Park, where West Ham beat Ipswich 3-1. I think it was about 2000 or 2001. I think Di Canio scored, but I remember being so little and just blown away by the stadium, and we were sat in the main stand. I can't remember its name.
It changed every season, didn't it?
Yeah. We were sat in the main stand, just to the right of the dugouts, and like from then I've had a shirt every single year. I've been creating players on the old FIFAs of me to play in West Ham, and it's never been anything else. And to be able to write about West Ham is just like amazing, really.
Exactly, and it must be, and also because you've got this vested interest, you must be even more passionate when it comes to writing content about West Ham, because it's your club. You know, it's not like it's Chelsea or whatever. It's your club, and so you've got this sort of almost like it's a vested interest, but even more so than a standard football journalist. You know what I mean, in terms of writing about anything to do with football. When you talk about West Ham, there's an extra sense of passion in your writing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just being able to write about the thing that you love, and you're going to go to, we're going to go to every week, kind of thing. And it's just pleasurable to do, rather than like trying to find out what players going for 80 million quid to United from Real Madrid, because majority of people want to know about that. I'd much rather write about what's happening with West Ham, even though there's a smaller viewership for it, because it's what I care about, and it's what I want people who I know care about as well. And I think they should know what's sort of happening, and I try to do it as best I can. Obviously, I'm still quite young in terms of getting into the journalism game. I've only finished my degree recently, so I've got a long way to go, but got quite high hopes to sort of emulate people I sort of admire, like Sam Inkersole at Football London, who, like, that would be like a dream come true to sort of be in that sort of position.
I can imagine. No, he's all right, Sam, isn't he? We'll get him on soon. Now, and also, with the Green Street Hammers, I mean, that's a great portal to work with. We spoke just before we came on the channel that we started the recording that you're getting, is it almost 100 articles coming up too soon?
So I think we're trying to push 100 articles for this month, and there's only a couple of days left, and I think we need 22 out of somewhere to reach it, but I don't think we've ever been this close. So it's real sort of graft to try push it on everyone. Like, come on, just write that player review. Like, it's 300 words on this player, or 300 words on that transfer rumor, or so, just to sort of help explain it for fans that read our site. But obviously, without trying to swamp people too much with the information. So I do apologise if over the next couple of days all anyone sees on their timeline on Twitter is just Green Street Hammers vomit, really.
Needs must, though, Henry. Needs must. That's the thing. And but it's great. I mean, as you said, it must be fun writing. It's like sort of the whole sort of creating and editing process, getting people to do 300 words, 300 words. It must be like a right buzz, and particularly about West Ham. It doesn't. I can imagine, although it's a lot of work, it's a labour of love, very much so for you. And that comes across. That comes across in the writing. That's for sure.
Thank you.
No, it is. I do read quite a few. Well, I read them from your Twitter handle.
Thank you.
So that's what I do.
Nice to know people are reading mine.
Yeah, no, I do, because I think it's always it's certain people, same as journalists, same as someone like Sam or someone like that, and you'll read his articles because you know that it makes a big difference. I think when the person writing the article is a West Ham fan, you get that impression coming through. That
definitely. I think it helps a lot more knowing that they're on your side.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of thing. Like, they're saying, like, I'm saying this is a good player because I think he's a good player, and I want him to come to West Ham, rather than saying, here's X player that has been linked to West Ham, da 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 da. Like, the fact that there's sort of that extra sort of couple sentences here or there that just shows, like, oh, okay, they're actually really taking interest because it's going to affect their club, kind of thing. So I think it's a good sort of habit to have.
Oh, definitely, and it does come across, definitely. And obviously, we got in contact together because of one of the articles you wrote, and I thought it worked really well for that My Hammers 11. So because it sort of fitted in with all the criteria we like to do, and the viewers particularly like to have themes with teams. So we've had the best chant 11. We've had I don't know, the French Hammers 11, things, these types of things. And it works better, I think, sometimes because it's not just about favourite players, because everyone has similar favourite players, but it's nice and it sort of maybe sheds light on a few players that might not have had light shed on them before, if that makes sense, for good or wrong reasons. And these could be wrong reasons, but I think everyone will enjoy this. So obviously, I'll introduce the idea, and you can add to it, Henry. But the idea is it's a calamity, London Stadium calamity 11, basically. So it's 11 West Ham players that weren't necessarily the worst players. And Henry did mention that in his article, despite what people say, it wasn't the worst players, but where it hasn't worked particularly well at the moment. We'll put a caveat because a couple of players are in there who I hope it may work for them later on. I don't want to. Some have left, so that's okay. We can slag them all off, but some are still there. So be quite nice. Is that a fair assumption, Henry, in terms of the article?
Yeah. So like, I did a original sort of copy for it for an old website I used to write for, which was Since We Got Promoted.
Yeah.
And I took the idea from one of my friends who did a Tottenham one, and I just thought it was such a great read, his one, and how he wrote it was really funny. I was like, I quite like the idea. It's like, it might not be players that you don't like or players that have been the worst signings and they've like not played or not scored or done like horrifically for the club. It's just a new way of sort of looking at it of like, well, maybe with some of them that is the case, but with some of them it could be they've actually done all right compared to other players in these positions we've had in the past. But from the expectations that have had of the players or the price tag that came with them, it hasn't worked out. And like, as we're seeing a couple of them, that might be the case.
yeah. So I think people enjoy it. It's quite a good read as well afterwards. We'll link to it after. I know you've watched it already, but we'll link to it afterwards because I think it adds a bit more when you read it in the article itself. So we'll start with in goal, Henry. Who could possibly be in goal for the London Stadium Calamity 11?
Well, to be honest, when I actually put him in, it was a real tough decision for me because I remember watching my original option, which made the original cut of the Calamity 11, Joe Hart, because I remember watching him and just thinking he was appalling. And like the promise everyone had for him as like England #1, he's going to be great. And he was awful. But this time it has gone to Roberto for those 8 games that he played. And even Joe Hart looked good by comparison. Like I always think about like the Newcastle game, we lost 3-2, and I think it's the third goal where he comes out of for the corner cross and just jumps like that, and the ball just lifts over him. Let alone the Burnley punching the ball into his own net. I think that's what everyone can agree with.
I mean, it's seen. I mean, hindsight's a great thing, as we all know, and. When the idea was we weren't going to renew Adrian's contract, we weren't going to give him the money he wants. We were going to let him go for the same money. We're going to bring in 2 experienced goalkeepers, send the 2 boys out on loan, Tross and the other guy on loan. It seemed like a really sensible approach, but there was a massive caveat on that, in that Fabianski not getting injured. And unfortunately, within like 3 weeks, he got injured, didn't he? And it was like, it's just like. It buggered up the whole of this season. Pellegrini lost his job, arguably because of that decision as well. Because if the team were playing well, then managers don't lose their jobs if the team are playing well and winning. And it was just a domino effect for the rest of the season for us, definitely. And I forgot, and I think the injury to Fabianski, I sort of was a bit naive to the effect a goalkeeper made to a club, made to a team. In terms of confidence, and they were just shot of confidence. Roberto got in between the sticks.
Yeah, everything just went like in my head. It's what cost our promising start to the season because we started the season really well. We won 3 of our first 6. Everyone was feeling really confident, thinking we're going to push on from our 10th place finish last season. And then we all knew how good Fabianski was. He got Hammer of the Year, and Roberto he came in quite highly thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I read somewhere originally he was a choice before Fabianski was, before we signed him, but he went to Olympiacos. Like thank God we didn't make that decision then. But he was coming off Olympiacos, like a very well-respected team. He was first choice and had played well. Occasionally you see there's an error, but you put that down to every goalkeeper has errors. I mean, Fabianski was known as Fabianski. Like,
Yeah.
if you thought about signing him 5 years ago before he went to Swansea, everyone would have gone like, "Are you sure we shouldn't be signing Jack Butland instead?"
Yeah.
But if you look at the difference where they are now, Fabianski's been one of the best goalkeeper signings we've made since, like, Robert Green, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Like, he's been great. Adrian had a great season in the last season of the Bowden Ground and the season before, but Fabianski's really become that cult hero that everyone's loved. And him not being in the side just dropped confidence. And Roberto, like, he only played for a couple of months, and the devastation that was caused by it throughout the rest of the season, just, it put us where we thought we might actually be going down, and it was a real possibility. I remember after the Tottenham game, I was really like, I don't know where we're going to get these points from. And like, my girlfriend's from Nottingham, she's a Forest fan, and I remember what happened with them in the playoffs, where they got cost out of the goal difference. It made me so like precious over our point against United, because I was like, if anyone can mess up a 12 goal difference, it would be West Ham.
Yeah, you just knew, wasn't it? Even if there's that glimmer of, if like, I interviewed Bobby Seagull, and obviously incredibly intelligent mathematician, and he gave me some probability rate of 99.8, and I was like, well, that's still 0.2%, that we
if anyone can do it.
Yeah,
if anyone can do it,
go on, boys. I mean, we went down with the most points ever, 42 points, so
I thought it would be a case of we'd have the record for going up with the most, going down with the most points, but staying up with the least points a couple months ago.
Yeah, definitely.
But the less said about Roberto, the better.
Yeah, let's move on to more calamities. I'll let you carry on. You can go through the team as you want to, in terms of Henry, in terms of what you want to go through in the players.
So, like, I'll start with the left back was Patrice Evra. Not that, I mean, when we signed him, he was just too old, and I think what sort of made him qualify for this team was the quotes that David Gold, I think, or David Sullivan came out with a week before we signed him, saying they might be 26 or 27, but they won't be 32. Like, we want to sign young players. And he's right. He wasn't 32. He was 36 years old. So that's sort of what's put him in it. He just wasn't good enough, and he wasn't what was needed at the time. We needed to sort of go for someone younger and have a bit of promise. And I think we're paying for that decision to sign Evra now by the inconsistency shown in Cresswell and Masuaku.
No, you're right. And it, as happens quite often with us, I mean, there's another 11 coming out of this, which is going to be the golden oldies 11, I think, where you can. And I'll talk to someone who's coming up and see if they could do that, because you're right. We always tend to sign players at the bookends of their career, and Evra he was past the bookend, wasn't he? Bless him. He was like, he was the other end. He'd read the book, he'd read the content, he'd read everything. He'd read the blurb at the back as well, and he was past it.
Yeah. I mean, there's always an argument to sign an experienced player. Like, I think it's going back to sort of like Brian Clough, if you watch the Damn United, where they go and sign the old Scottish centre midfielder to be the general, and it works brilliantly. Like, I think Gold and Sullivan might be too big of fans of that film, so they think they can do it with every position occasionally. But Evra was just too far past it, and that's why he's in the squad.
I mean, it worked with obviously Sheringham. Famously.
Yeah, Sheringham's he's the epitome of why it can work well.
Yeah, and to some extent Zabaleta as well, but yeah, Evra was just the wrong position for the wrong time, wasn't he? Really? Right, we'll move on, because this is because we're keeping it light. Okay, go centre backs then. Who's your first centre back?
The centre backs I thought was a bit harsh, because we've only signed 3, like, actual centre backs since we moved to London Stadium. So I couldn't really bring myself to put Issa Diop into it, because I think he's done quite well and he's shown a huge promise. But Jose Font was one, because he was bought with half the Dimitri Payet money. And his first game, we lost 4-0. He gave away a penalty against City. I thought he actually had some good games.
Yeah.
But he was injured, and what people thought we were getting didn't really turn up. Like, I love the song, Jose Fonte Baby. Like, he was one of the players you really wanted it to work for, because he'd done so well at Southampton. He'd come up from the bottom leagues with them. But like Evra, we just got him a few years too late, really.
Well,
and
especially because like Liverpool were like after him, I remember once, and he was at Southampton, and you're thinking we've done all right here, but it just didn't work, did it?
He's one of those the potential was there for it to work as like the stalwart for a couple of seasons, as he goes into his like glory years kind of thing. But it was just a bit too far gone and just lost that bit of pace that made it a bit too difficult for him. The other centre back, I felt really bad putting him in because I really like Fabian Balbuena.
Me too.
But this season for him's been, as I'll say, calamitous. And I think it's all sort of a hangover from the Copa America last summer.
Yeah.
Like he came back, didn't have the full preseason, and he just looked knackered, really.
Yeah.
And when we came back after lockdown, he did look better when he had to play. So it almost sort of showed that the rest he was actually finally sort of back to full fitness. That player was still there from last year, where he formed a brilliant partnership with himself and Diop.
Solid.
But we've only signed 3 actual centre backs since we've been there, so he had to go in over Diop. Even though we didn't pay that much for him, but he came across as the general from Corinthians, and like from last season he would be brilliant. Yeah. But this season sort of put him into the squad. I'm sorry, Fabian.
No, but I agree, and you're right. I really rate. I do like him as a player because he's just got that sort of. And I can see why they used to call him the General at Corinthians, because he does have that sort of like quite commanding presence rather, and I just think he is. There's the potential there. I mean, you're not going to be the Corinthians captain and be crap. Do you know what I mean?
No,
and
he's still not too old either. No. Like, he's still got time to sort of put it back around. He's only 27, 28 now. So for a centre-back, he could have another 5 years at the top of his game, really, as long as he recaptures that form.
Yeah.
But that's what I do say in the article. They can work themselves back out of it.
Exactly. That's why we put an asterisk on all these all the current live players, because, as you said, things change. But I think unfortunately, for him, he's third choice now, isn't he? So clearly third choice.
Yeah, sadly.
Unless Jose stumps up 60, 70 for Diop, which because he loves him. I don't think
the monster at the back, I think he called him.
Exactly. When he was at United, I remember that game because when he said it, whoever scouted him was a genius, and I was like, that's
it must have been our one scout.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, who is?
We've
this
only
genius?
got one, but he's really, really good.
He's great. He just doesn't get around a lot. That's the only trouble. But so we'll put Balbuena in. Right back. It was a blast from the past, so to speak.
Yeah, right back was really only one obvious choice, if people can even remember that he actually played for West Ham, was Alvaro Arbeloa. He was appalling, like more so than ever in terms of being past his best. Like, I remember one of the first games I saw him play, it was against Southampton, where they just destroyed us 3-0. And he was just awful, and he turned so slowly. And you had to think, like, even Antonio at right back was a far, far superior option. And I understand the thought of signing him, so Antonio wouldn't have had to be right back, like Bilic sort of played around with.
Yeah.
But Arbeloa was just horrific. Like, to put it bluntly, he was horrific. I mean, he even said his season at West Ham convinced him to retire. So he agrees.
I just felt sorry for, again, it was one of those which should have worked. You know what I mean? Because he signed in, wasn't it, Real Madrid before he came to us, and just another. And obviously he had this very fiery relationship with Bilic, it seemed, based on what everyone was saying, and I felt sorry for him. I just didn't work out, but you're right. But he apparently came with so much baggage that he was, the best person, the best football player ever, and better than West Ham and stuff. Yeah. So you've sort of set yourself behind to nothing.
Yeah, I think if we've learned anything from it, West Ham and Real Madrid should never do transfer business regarding fullbacks with him and Faubert. I think it's just best if we leave each other for our own fullbacks to deal with.
We'll come back when we want Tony Cruz. We'll come back then. Yeah, or
I'm just talking about the
Ramos.
fullbacks.
Just the fullbacks.
Doesn't
Ramos.
seem to go well.
Ramos is okay. I'd even take Courtois. But
Yeah.
yes, we'll leave the Carvajal can rest easy and Martial.
Even if he is great, he'll come to us and he'll just go wrong.
It's the West Ham way, isn't it? It's the West Ham way.
It is the West Ham way.
Right, let's go into midfield then. Who are we going to have in midfield then for this 11?
So the left side of midfield I put as Sead Hakasabanovic, if I'm saying that right. More so because he came with a lot of promise and never really got a chance. But there's also like the story that he was signed to sort of convince Arnautovic to join the club as well. Yeah. And so there's other players that maybe could have gone into it, but for the purpose of just trying to appease Arnautovic, then what happened with Arnautovic has led him to be in the spot. I think he's left the club permanently now. So, I mean, one saving grace might be he might have earned the club some profit. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, because wasn't there that rumour when he was playing for whoever he was playing for that, like, there was all these amazing clubs were looking at him, and it's like,
I think it was only in January, like, Bayern Munich and AC Milan were reportedly looking at him, but he's been sold back to Norway. So his agent must be crazy.
Yeah,
I think if he's got the same agent as Arnautovic, then you probably understand the stories a bit more.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But then particularly when it all goes sour in China and Arnie says, "Oh, I can come back. Oh, can you? Oh, really? What a surprise! What a surprise! Because you're stuck in Austria at the moment because you can't get back into China." But again, he's one of those players very similar to people like Samuelson. Do you know what I mean? Who is they sort of could have just
a lot of promise. Everyone wanted to see him come and try out at West Ham and actually be given a run of games, but just never happened.
No,
sort of like how many managers needs to have a look at him till everyone understands, oh, actually, maybe he's not cut out for it. Because if 3 managers have had a look at him and gone, it's not going to happen. But all the fans but some fans saying, oh, but he's playing in the Norwegian league and has scored 4 goals and 3 assists in 10 games, which statistically looks great. But if you got David Moyes, Slaven Bilic and Manuel Pellegrini all going, no, I don't want to give him a chance, it might show that he wasn't good enough.
Yes,
so that's why he's got his place in the starting 11 for this calamitous bunch.
Yep. Okay, so we'll put Seed in. Who's next, Henry?
Next was who I've decided to be captain of the squad, Carlos Sanchez.
Oh, Carlos Sanchez, God bless him.
The combination of wages to ability, and I think we still paid a transfer fee for him, was just horrific. I saw him earlier this season when he actually managed to play 1 game, and he controlled the ball with his chest more than his feet. Like every time the ball was like coming at him, just out of nowhere, chest. And my mate next to me was like, "Why is he doing that? Why is this like his first decision to make?" And I might have understood the reasoning to try and sign him in the first place, because he went down with a Villa side and might have looked worse because of how bad Villa was. In the same way, Idrissa Gueye went to Everton from a relegated Villa side, and he turned into an unbelievable player. So that is my only sort of logic that I can build to of why we signed him and why it might have worked. But it was just, it's just been a.
But it was good. It was good at was it Fiorentina we signed him from, I think, and or some Italian team, and he was doing all right there. And you might have thought, I was the same as you. I was thinking, oh, maybe he just had a bad rub at Villa, because some players do just have a bad rub. They go to another club, reinvigorate themselves, come back, and I thought, well, it was that sort of midfielder, combative midfielder that we sort of didn't have loads of spare for
I mean, the thought would be, instead of signing him to keep Obiang, would have been probably the better choice.
Yes.
But I mean, I think his nickname is The Rock, Sanchez, and he was like, the idea would be he'd come on in the last 10 minutes of the game where it's 1-0 or 2-1 and just to sort of solidify and shut up shop. But usually the other happened and we concede. Rather than putting on another striker. I remember one of his first games was Wolves last season, and everyone obviously still were very much underrating how good Wolves were, as they'd just come up, and he just cost us the game so badly. He just looks so slow. Like, I understand why he did well in Italy, because it's a much slower, more tactical league where you've got a lot more time on the ball, but you can't play like that in the Premier League. It's just not going to work, and we now know why.
Yes, and it seems that sort of the way I see the particularly this transfer window, and obviously the January transfer window as well, the one that's just gone. There's a definite change in the guard in terms of our transfer policy. It is. I know we always talk about this Leipzig model, but it is the Leipzig model now. It seems picking up younger, hungrier players from different leagues as well. So not spending money on Italian leagues, but I mean, Souček's a classic example. You know, we could put him in the market tomorrow. We would double our money
easily
within a few days. Easy.
Yeah, Souček, if he plays next season how he played this season, he'll be really tricky to keep hold of.
Yeah.
If we struggle again, but he's like Declan Rice from this year, but obviously he plays a bit more attacking and can sort of get forward and maybe a bit more of a goal threat, he'll be chased by everyone that needs a central midfielder that can score goals and defend.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That's a lot of teams that would want a player like that, especially if you think Man City have got Fernandinho on his way out. They're the team that I'm worried about for Declan and or Souček next season, because he's an unbelievable player, and he's one of those ones where a lot of people haven't clocked onto him how good he is yet outside of West Ham.
Yeah.
But as soon as next season starts, and if he carries on how he's started, he'll be a fan favourite at the club, and it'll be unbelievable. Then incredibly hard to keep hold of.
Exactly, he's going to be one of those ones. One of the ones that are always in the fantasy Premier League teams. You'll see that next season, because he'll be cheap, because he'll be met West Ham, and he'll be.
I don't think it's going to be hard to keep hold of him. I think for himself, because I think he's a very ambitious player.
Yeah.
I mean, every time he was sort of asked about signing for West Ham permanently, he was like, "Oh, I can't wait. I really want to do it." And then it was always followed with, "As long as they're in the Premier League."
Yeah.
And I don't blame him for that. He's a good enough player to sort of demand that, but if a bigger club comes in calling for him, he's using the West Ham as like a, "Hi guys, I can do it on this stage," which is fair enough. And as long as he plays how he is, I won't mind him doing that, because if he ends up going and he brings a big profit to the club that we can reinvest and build the squad again, then that's perfect. Especially with what we're trying to do, that's how we should be trying to do it.
That's how we should.
Buy players, give them the platform, sell them off to the Chelsea or United for double the money, and then reinvest it wisely and bring in the younger players again to then do it again until we're at the position where we can say, "No, you don't want to leave here because we are being successful as our current ownership have promised and suggested that we will be plenty of times."
Exactly. And I think I think there'll be a slight it's making a profit off a player is something which we don't tend to do a lot of, and as a sort of first step, and I think that's where we're clearly going in now. Same as Bowen. I mean, we wouldn't set, but if we sold Bowen on the market today, we'd make £10 million on him. It'd be 20, 25, 30 million pounds easily. You know what I mean? So just because of he's an British-based player as well, and that's definitely a way. And sort of the Carlos Sanchez's of this world, I don't think we'll be seeing many of them for a long, long time. Maybe it's a bit like Football Manager, isn't it? At the beginning of the season, you have a look for the free transfers, and you try and get Paolo Maldini or just he's Maxim Zigalko,
just to have the name at the club.
Yeah, exactly, to sell the shirts. And Sanchez, I think it was definitely a change in transfer policy. Right. Okay, who's next? Next is our little Jack Wilshere. He came off a relatively good season with Bournemouth in terms of playing, and that was probably the first issue with Jack Wilshere, is rating how good he'd been just because he'd played over 20 games. Yes,
that's probably the first issue. Is not in terms of like how he played or what he did. The fact he just played 20 games.
Yeah,
I think I was with everyone of like, I really want it to work for him.
Oh, definitely.
Of course, everyone would want it to work for him, but it's just that injuries are carried on, and I think when he has played, he hasn't shown enough. Whether or not it's because it's match fitness or so, but I just don't think he's shown enough to warrant playing. So if we were playing the midfield three of Rice, Souček, and then that extra spot, and if it's not Mark Noble, in my mind, it goes to Pablo Fornals because he's shown that he can graft and do the defensive work, but he's also got the attacking skill. And Jack Wilshere, he's lacked that when he has played. And he's just not sort of done enough. I remember when we signed him and it was the first game of the season against Liverpool, and watching Sky Sports and Graham Souness, the incredible knowledge that he had. And we just signed Felipe Anderson and all these other players. And he said, oh, Jack Wilshere, he will be the best player for them. And it's just like, you've not researched any of the other players we've signed, and you're just gone, oh, Jack Wilshere's there, I'll talk about him for 10 minutes. Yeah, I've heard of him. So, I mean, he scored 1 goal in a cup, I think it was against Newport, which was a great moment. Everyone loved it. But for fault outside of his own in terms of performances, his injuries has put him into it. Like, he was probably great fun for Andy Carroll to have around for a year. That's, I think, probably the best it's got for him.
And it was a shame because obviously during lockdown, when before we had restart, he was fighting fit, and and we were told that there was no injuries, and then that week before when they started doing proper training, like Haller got injured, Wiltshire got injured, and it's a shame because I think he would have made a difference. I really do. I think when he was fit, he just gave, because particularly for the first couple of games, we were crying out for someone just to have a go, just to put a bit of a through ball through, or just go for a jinky run. And he can do it, and I think that's the thing. It's just like, because it's there, you just can't wrap him up in cotton wool enough. And he's one of those players, a bit like Antonio sometimes, where every time he goes down, you wince because you think, how long's he going to be out for? And that's the trouble with him. You can't. There's always that apprehension when he goes in for a challenge that he's going to get injured. And it must just be a psychological thing as well for him as well, because it must be awful knowing that you're that injury prone. But all right, Jack's in. Who's next? Who's next? I'm not it's good fun.
The right midfielder is Bilic's golden boy from Besiktas, Gökhan Toure. Everyone was so excited to sign him, and everyone was so furious when we'd only loaned him for £4 million rather than spending, I think it was the 16 to buy him. Everyone going, what's the point of loaning him? Just buy him now and it's done before he plays and has an incredible season, and then we have to pay 20-30 million quid to keep him. But he really didn't work out. His best moment was his first game. And he set up Antonio's winning goal at the first Premier League game at the London Stadium. But from there it just went down. He just had no final quality, and he just looked off the pace. He didn't look fit, and he quickly got found out by defenders, and he had very little impact. And then he got injured, and then that was sort of, and then everyone forgot about him because Faguli took his place, and Antonio. So he just wasn't there. Like, Faguli was someone I thought about putting in, but I actually thought he did all right. I thought he got a lot of unfair stick. He was one of the players I was really gutted to see leave, because he looked like he was just sort of getting back into that form. The goal he scored against Burnley in the last day of the season, I was like, we've played someone through and they've slipped the ball past the goalkeeper. That is a move we never do. We finally had someone doing that, and then we got rid of them. But Gökhan Toure.
He was, I was one of those who was really excited, because I think as soon as Bilic was the manager, there was talk of us getting Toure in, and it was like, because he's like, he's his mate and they're good buddies. And I was thinking, and you see, obviously, then you go to the YouTube, don't you? Then you see the clips.
Oh, he looks incredible on YouTube, Toure, especially as like a creative player for like assists. He just looked everything we've sort of needed for ages, of a winger that will cut down to the byline and cut it back, which we still don't have. No. Except for, I think, one time Anderson showed it this season against Watford at the beginning of the season, and Fredericks did it against against Norwich. And like, the amount of times you watch that happen to West Ham, you'd like to know at least we could do it to other teams. And that's what we thought we were going to get with Toure, but he just wasn't there.
No, and
it was a shame.
It was a shame, but could we put him down as the first assist at Upton Park at London Stadium?
He is. So, if you remove the Europa League games,
yes,
that happened there.
Oh yeah, God, I remember that.
Kouyate's first 2 goal scorer, I think.
Yeah.
And then Faguli was the third.
It's such a roll call of players, isn't it? It's like you think going to the. Oh, I don't know.
I still get confused with the whole stadium opening. That we did the stadium opening against Juventus, despite the fact we played 2 games there in the Europa League qualifiers. Like the scheduling and running of that was just make either the Europa League game the opening. That would be better, even though you're playing against whatever team it was. European football at the London Stadium to open it would have been. I understand trying to get a named team in to add the glamour, but if you're going to do that, do it before the competitive season starts.
I don't think it was a bit of a rush job, isn't it? By everything, by all accounts. I reckon they didn't plan us getting into Europe. It was that season was just an incredible season the season before, and I don't think we'd assumed it was going to be as good because we'd had a couple of rubbish seasons before then, and it was strange, because it's like this is not the proper opening. No, it's not the proper opening. Okay, but just the West Ham way, really. We know that Henry more than anyone. So okay. And so my mother-in-law was something. So anyway, so obviously Gökhan Töre's in up front. Who are we going to have up front?
Well, speaking of the stadium opening, I think that's probably the best way to introduce the next player, the guy who has scored at the London Stadium, but in a Juventus shirt, Simone Zaza, the player that was supposed to be the marquee signing that was going to fire us through the Europa League to winning it. When we've been linked with Alexander Lacazette, Michy Batshuayi, players that have gone to the Premier League and scored. We were linked with Carlos Bacca for about a year, it seems, in terms of... I think he joined us about 5 times and was going to be announced at the kit opening.
Carlos
and then it just constantly didn't happen.
Yeah, Carlos Bacca was the Ida Johnson of the modern era. So Ida Johnson's like every year, we're signing him. He's having his medical. He's still having his medical 10 years on, but I always back up.
I wanted to compare. I remember one of the people commenting about it was like, you should do like a villainous West Ham 11 of players that we've played against, and I was like, Johnson needs to be in it just for the amount of times he was going to sign for us. But Zaza, 11 games I think he played, 0 goals. I think I summed it up quite well of saying the best it got for him was at Crystal Palace where he put in a good shift. I remember everyone being so sort of the videos the club were putting out of him training and like scoring, and it just wasn't happening. I think he tried like an overhead kick from about 30 yards away at the London Stadium, and he had his wild snapshot at Manchester United, and was like, right, he needs something to happen for him.
Yeah.
And then the Crystal Palace came when Aaron Cresswell had come back from injury, and he set up that lovely assist from Lanzini. I remember saying to one of the guys I sit next to the next home game, saying it's weird that we look better attacking now. Our left back is better. But everyone, I remember people raving about Zaza, being like, "Oh, he played really well. He held the ball up. He was winning knock-ons." But that was it. Like that's the best he did for us, was just a solid game as a target man, not in terms of scoring or creating chances, just holding the ball up really, and that was the best it got for him.
And as you said, the fact that he scored at London Stadium but in Juventus shirt just sums up his time at West Ham. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. It was such a brilliant goal, and it was exactly the kind of striker we needed. In terms of, I remember it was a long ball from I think it was Chiellini over the top of our defence. He ran onto it. It looked rapid when he did it and fired it first time into the bottom right-hand corner across the goal. It was like, that's the exact striker we need, someone that can run in behind and do this. Did we play that system to accommodate a striker? No. Did the striker not fail because they didn't play an assistant that suited them? Yes. And he failed horrifically. And that does bring us on to the next striker, which I think a lot of people disagreed with me.
Yes.
In terms of, if you spend 40 plus million pounds on a striker and do not pay a system that suits them, it is a calamitous error, because it not only makes him look bad, it makes the club look bad for not being able to accommodate a £40 million striker. And that is why Sebastian Haller made the team. I know he scored 7 or 8 goals, which for us is actually quite a good return for a striker. If that's the amount of money we have to spend in order to get that, I don't know how much we have to spend to get a player that scores 15 goals a season. But I think I got a bit of slack for putting Haller in. Someone say, "Oh, it was clickbait because Haller was the picture." I was like, "Well, he's in the team." He goes, "Well, that's clickbait for putting him in the team." I was like, "But if you do this, it's an appalling administrative error because you shouldn't be signing a player that relies to be played in a certain way and then not play him like that. Like, if you think of what we've been doing this season is basically relying on a striker to do it all, really, like we tried with Haller, it would have been far more sensible idea to have signed Danny Ings at Southampton, who has basically had to be a target man despite being under 6 foot, it seems, but has done it brilliantly. He's done it by himself. Haller can't do that because he hasn't got the pace. You think he's this like big moody man that's not going to get barged off the ball. But the last game against Villa, the first thing that happened was someone just put their arm in the back of him in a jump and he was on the ground for 5 minutes. Like, I really wanted it to work for him. I have a friend in Germany who's a Frankfurt fan. He was like, "Oh, look after him. And I was like, "Oh, no, we will. We've got players that will make it work," because I can easily imagine Felipe Anderson playing more inside or Antonio playing more inside, and you've got the players around him. But we haven't played that, so it hasn't worked. And, I mean, the epitome of showing how much it hasn't worked is the fact someone signed for £7 million 5 years ago from Nottingham Forest, scored more goals than he did all season in 6 games.
Yeah.
And that's Antonio. So, and he's 30 now and is constantly injured. But when he isn't, he's outperforming West Ham's record transfer signing
I know what you mean.
quite easily. So I really want it to work for Haller. I think he's got time to get himself out of this team if we play a system that suits him. When we have, I think the Southampton game where we won 3-1, he was brilliant in terms of like playing his connection with Antonio and playing him in. You always got to think of that Rabona chip pass that went over the Southampton back four and Antonio ran onto it. And Antonio, being Antonio, still needs to learn to finish a one-on-one. But it was a brilliant, brilliant move. And when we play like that, he's brilliant. But we haven't done that the majority of the season, which is another failing because of Roberto. We've had to put another defender on to try cover it, which has left Haller up top by himself. So it's not his fault he's in it. But I know he could have done more to stop himself being in it by himself. But it's just one of those cases of like, he's a great player. I agree with everyone. He's a very talented footballer. But if you're not playing to his strengths, he's not going to be able to do it. You could have the best player in the world, but if you put Zidane at right back, he's not going to do a very good job. I know Haller is a striker, but if you're putting him as a lone striker, he's not going to do a good job. So that's why he's in it. I know I could have put Caleri in, but I actually really liked Caleri. I thought he got a bit of slag. He never stopped running, and that's what Haller doesn't do. Caleri, you wanted it to work for him so badly. I mean, when he scored against Middlesbrough, I was like, "Oh, that's the moment." He just needed that bit of luck. And then I think the next game was Tottenham, or it was a couple games later, the Lanzini winner, and Caleri had the moment where he dropped. He controlled the ball and spun his defender, and he hit a shot. And Lloris just pulled out a ridiculous save. And you got to think, if that had got in, you could have seen the Caleri that we thought we would have had. And he's done all right since he's gone to Spain. But Haller's not inspiring in the same way as Caleri's effort is. Because you get too frustrated with him. You can't get frustrated with Caleri because it's not happened for him. He's trying, and that's what we love as West Ham fans. I don't really care if you're good or not. If you run around a lot, that's great.
No, it's true. It's true. I know exactly what you mean. It makes perfect sense, and I just think because of the way Haller has this sort of French way about him. He is he's like quite nonchalant, and he just he waits for the ball, and whereas someone like Caleri made things happen. We fans love people like Carlton Cole and Ian Dowie, who they weren't very good, but they didn't stop. They put
Carlton Cole was the hero at West Ham, and
exactly.
He's not West Ham's Premier League top goal scorer.
No,
he's very far from it. We went down to the Championship. He set his target at 15 goals, which he achieved through the playoffs and in the playoff final. That, for someone who played for England, is appalling as a target. But I love Carlton Cole because he loved the club and he put his all into it, regardless of his actual talent that he had. But That's why Haller was in it. Like at the moment, I still believe it can work.
I
still
think it can work. With the
It
players
just needs to put a system into it, and then we'll see the player we signed.
The players are there. I mean, he played in the front
season
three.
before. Yeah, the season before he was alongside Luka Jovic, who's gone to Real Madrid. That move hasn't quite worked, but an unbelievable player, and Ante Rebic, who's gone to AC Milan.
Yeah,
who we've also been linked with in the past as well. I think he'd have been a better shout to replace Arnautovic because he seems so similar in terms of his style of play and just general moodiness. But that's who I think we should have signed. But Haller was not a bad option to sign as long as we fit the system around him, and we haven't done that. And so it's more so the management's fault.
You're right, and the system is there. You know, the players are there now. Arguably, I think he could play in that three with Bowen and Antonio, but it's having that confidence in the rest of the team because that's three very attacking-minded players who you want to be playing up. I mean, there's no point playing the formation and then actually, rather than playing a 3, it's a 5 in midfield because then you're back to having Haller up front in his own. He needs he needs support. But
the best thing we can do for Haller is not to sign a striker to play next to him. It's to sign 2 very good fullbacks.
Yes.
So the defense is more solid because the players, like you said, Antonio and Bowen, they are perfect to do that role. But they're too busy having to cover for the fullbacks. So that's the issue. So if we sign 2 very competitive fullbacks that are very Premier League quality and better what we've got now, then that should happen. Ben Johnson, I think, is a great player, but he's still very raw and I think it's a bit soon to say, okay, Ben Johnson, your first team. Fredericks, we're going to sell you, and then whoever is the kid in the academy at right back at the moment, he's going to be the second choice. I think that would be very risky.
Yeah.
We need to sign a right and a left back, and I think if we do that, the rest of the solidity is there with Rice and Souček and Diop and Ogbonna. Then I think you're looking at a very good squad that's got a clear system and how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And that's how I think we can improve for next season.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. Let's hope, Henry. Oh dear, we'll see. Henry, man, it's been wicked chatting to you. I've really, really, really enjoyed it. It's been lovely.
Cheers.
It's nice going. I know it's nice talking about favourite players, but sometimes it's nice having a good old rant about some people who haven't just.
I always enjoy talking about the players that have flopped more so than the players that don't, because they're great. But if you can't look at the players that have failed and sort of laugh to yourself.
Yeah,
I think someone messaged me saying, "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to get out of it?" I was like, "Well, if anything, it's just funny."
Exactly.
And also, it makes you kind of proud that we're still in the Premier League despite these players.
This. Exactly, and that's the thing. It's retrospectively. It's not like we're not going and slagging off the team that's going to be starting next season. It's happened,
exactly.
And we can laugh about it, and even more so. There's an Upton Park calamity 11 you could do easily full of Harry's signings. It's like that'd be a good one. But anyway, Henry, it's been lovely, mate. Appreciate you taking the time, and obviously
thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure, man. And obviously everyone watching, get involved with the Hammers Street, Green Street Hammers. Site, loads of great content, loads of great articles there, and like, share, subscribe this as well, of course, and we'll put a link of the video of the actual article, Henry's article, in the description as well, so read it as well, because obviously there'll be lots of analysis and thoughts as well, which maybe Henry might have glossed over today, or extra stuff, who knows, but it's worth doing that. And check out the rest of the site, and for me and Henry, take care everyone, stay safe, come on you irons, and you've got to do it, don't you? When someone else does it, it's like
you got to do it.
and take care everyone, stay safe, we'll see you again very, very soon. See you everyone, bye bye.